Hello everyone and welcome to my video, how to speedrun integrated strategies in Arknights. Now there's been a lot of discussion about this over the past few days because of the Lungmen Dragons tournament, which requires a speedrun for the qualifiers. So only the top 32 fastest times that submit on Arknights EN are going to be allowed to take part in the upcoming tournament. Now the deadline is, I think, in, 12 hours or so. So there's not a lot of time left to get your scores in, your runs in. So, and I've been getting a ton of questions. It's just a speedrunner of Arknights integrated strategies in the past, and somebody who just for fun was doing IS3 speedruns. But keeping in mind that I do them on a harder difficulty than the Lungmen Dragons requires it. I cannot participate in the Lungmen Dragons tournament because I am part of Lungmen Dragons. So there's that. Now, this guide is hopefully going to be able to provide you some tips and tricks, some perspective on how I see things and how I achieve the times that I do achieve without meeting crazy requirements. But one thing that I do have to mention is that I'm normally a Twitch streamer. I do not edit YouTube videos, so all of this is going to be taken in one shot, one cut. There's going to be very minimal editing, so please bear with me on that front. To give a bit more background on who I am, I've been playing Arknights literally since launch, never missed a day. I also did some Arknights IS2 speedruns, and I simultaneously held all 3 world records for easy, normal, and hard mode for Arknights IS2, as well as did a lot of no relics runs and guides for IS2. So I'm coming into IS3 with probably quite a bit more experience than most people have for speedrunning. And so I'll be able to share my tips and tricks with all of you. First and foremost, what device are you playing on? That's quite important. I'm playing on the Google Play Emulator, Google Play Games Beta. I've found that in my testing, this has had by far the lowest load times between to enter combat stages. So where my other emulators were taking 8 to 10 seconds, even with a very beefy computer, I'm taking 8 to 10 seconds to load into other maps and other emulators. Whereas with the Google Play Games Beta, I'm averaging about 5 seconds. That's pretty good, but there has to be some downsides, and of course there are downsides. There are no built-in game controls for Arknights on Google Play Games Beta. You cannot set your own keybinds, you cannot do any of this. So if you do switch to Google Play Games Beta, keep in mind you're going to be playing 100% with your mouse. And that means every pause, every time you're switching 2 times, everything is going to be done with your mouse, and that's going to be all your control. So if you have really bad hand-eye coordination for things like that, might not be the best. And a different emulator that has the keybinds that is going to be able to assist you in that sense. One of the discussions I had with one of the moderators on speedrun.com, so if you are planning on maybe looking at this guide, wanting to participate more in speedruns in the future outside of the Lungmen Dragons tournament, you will not be able to use keybinds with Google Play Games Beta, while you would be able to use keybinds with some of the other emulators. And discussing with Zopni, the moderator, using external tools to create pseudo keybinds is not allowed for speedrun.com. So that's going to be one of the first things regarding speedrunning. If you're really slow with the mouse, this might not be for you, but I'll be doing my examples and everything on Google Play Games Beta. The other thing to remember is that Google Play Games Beta requires virtualization, which can really be funky with some of the other emulators, and not all of them like it. I've seen people say it works with Nox, and I've personally used BlueStacks with Hyper-V to continue using other emulators, because not all games are available on Google Play Games Beta, so you might still want to be using other emulators depending on the games that you do play. Right now, I'm only playing Arknights, so for me it doesn't matter. So let's jump into actual tips and tricks regarding Arknights integrated strategies. First, you'll notice I've already finished my cognitive shaping. I've already finished my perspective investment system. So one of the things, especially with the perspective investment system, is that it stocks an additional item. Now, given that if you're planning on applying for the Lungmen Dragons tournament, you're not going to have a lot of time to finish this, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But the times that I saw today for the cutoff, you're going to be looking at having a really good... You're going to have either a decent time with using the relic end of times or have a combat skip using a key, because even a good 8 combat node run is not going to cut it anymore, at least from what I've seen in terms of the cutoffs. So getting that extra item at the Rogue Trader, and considering Rogue Trader is not a combat node, you'll definitely be passing through the Rogue Trader on floor 1 and potentially on the other floors in the run. So having that extra chance of seeing an end of times to skip a combat node is pretty decent, I would say. It's pretty impactful. Not that I've ever seen an end of times myself, so maybe take it with a grain of salt, because clearly I've never gotten one. Since my current PB for IS3 at +0 is sitting at 2216 or something. So 2216, 2216. So take it as you will regarding the prospective investment system, and then let's jump into actual gameplay. So I've seen a lot of people using one of the specialty squads. So one of these tactical squads. Now, this was really common, especially with IS2, because it was consistent in IS2. If I took tactical assault squad, I could always start guaranteed with an E2 Thorns. Can't do that anymore, because now it's just a chance of being randomly promoted. And so this comes with benefits and downsides. Benefits are, if you, let's say you're starting with Tech Salter, you might take this, and you might get your E2 Tech Salter right away, and now you don't have to worry about getting another specialist voucher for the rest of the run, and all this. One thing that I noticed is that people are taking a lot of time to scroll to the back and actually select their squad. So that's one thing to remember, is that you're spending this time to scroll to the back. Now these 1, 2, 3 seconds are not going to make or break your run, but it can set the rhythm for the run. My recommendation here is to take one of the first 3, and let's talk about this. People are into squad. It's going to be really easy. You're always going to have hope to pick whatever operators you want. Even if you're picking a lot of 6 stars, you're probably going to have more than enough hope to pick the necessary 6 stars and 5 stars that you want for your run, and to be comfortable. The safe house, if you do end up passing through a safe house in the run, at the very minimum, that allows you to hopefully E2 operators that you want E2 for your strategy, whatever strategy you might need for whatever ending you might be facing. And I'll talk a bit more about that after. Resourcefulness squad, 2 dice rolls upon entering a new floor, and start with the 8-sided die. The 8-sided die is pretty important and pretty impactful. So this is going to help prevent, if you do lose life and lose light, this will help prevent debuffs on your operators. You don't want to be on a perfect run and then you have your Chalter debuffed and have minus 50% attack. You know, that's not great for a run. Obviously, IS3 is going to be all RNG anyway, so, you know, if it happens, and that's not the end of the world, but just a suggestion, just a recommendation. But on the positive side, besides just avoiding debuffs, you could also be looking at trying to gain better relics, because with the shop, if you roll I think it's 6 or higher with the shop, then he refreshes the entire shop, or it's 5 or higher, and discounts items. And so this 8-sided die improves your chance of that happening. So again, when I'm talking about having a shop and being able to purchase end of times outright, all of the normal runs that I've seen end of times, they've almost always appeared in the shop or after the floor 3 boss. But I've also heard people discussing with their PBs, especially aiming for sub-20s, they're using Resourcefulness Squad so that they can aim for an end of times through the Wish Fulfilled, which is the boons. And that Wish Fulfilled, when you roll a 6 or higher, you get a second relic. So over the run, you might be seeing 2, 3, 4 Wish Fulfilleds, or boons, and so having an 8-sided die improves your chance of getting an extra relic from each of those, which means increased chance of end of times. I've tried Mind Over Matter Squad. You do get increased relics from maps, increased chance of relics. I don't actually know what the increase is, and it doesn't seem super relevant. So I will. It's out there. So if you do happen to pass through many emergencies or other things, maybe Mind Over Matter Squad is quite good. I haven't felt too much use out of it, but either way, I would recommend any to start your speed run. And this is going to avoid you having to scroll to the back to do any of your runs. And then this is the other thing. So remember I talked about Insta E2 squads, or the RNG Insta E2. with taking one of those first 3 squads versus one of the tactical squads, I know that every single voucher is in exactly the same place every time I want to take it. So I know that my Texas is up here. My Texas is up here, so I can go ahead, clicker, confirm. I know that my Cruise is always going to be down here on the left. I know my Fang's always going to be on the top left. And this means I can just... My opening is just, at this point, committed to muscle memory. I can just pick out my entire team, and I'm completing my whole opening sequence in roughly 10 seconds. Whereas I'm watching other people and they're completing it in 18, 20, even 30 seconds. While 10 seconds time loss is going to be a make or break for a run. It can add up with other mistakes in the run. And especially right now with how competitive the top 32 times in is Lungmen Dragons, or if you are aiming for a top spot on speedrun.com, this is going to be potentially important. And now, keep in mind, I'm using a mouse. I find it's easier on mobile because you don't have to actually physically move your mouse over. You just have to tap, 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 and you're done. So you might choose to do your speedruns on mobile, where load times are pretty consistently fast, versus an emulator where load times are slower and you actually have to move your mouse or use keybinds for all of these things. Now, one thing that I've noticed, or actually, let me talk about this first. So as soon as I'm entering my floor here, I'm not, especially floor 1 and 2, I'm not scrolling over to see. I'm just immediately looking, do I have a path with no encounters? So I'm not going to sit here looking, I'm going to be immediately clicking. But as I'm clicking, I'm looking at my paths, and am I seeing, do I have a 2 encounter path? And if I do, then I continue the run. If not, this is where I leave. And now you can abandon. So one thing that you're going to be looking for is that every single run that you're going to be doing, if you're aiming for a better score or to be able to compete in the top 32, you're most likely going to have to look for a 1-1-2-2-2 run or better. What does a 1-1-2-2-2 run mean? It means a 1 combat on floor 1 and 2, and then 2 combats on floor 3, 4, and 5. This is not including bosses. And this was the minimum in IS2, the minimum standard run. And while in IS2, I would say that maybe 60% of runs achieved a 1-1-2-2-2. So if you went through every single run and you aimed for the lowest number of combat nodes possible per floor, you could, on average, about 60% of the time get a 1-1-2-2-2. In IS3, I found that floor 1 and 2 RNG is a lot more variable, where I'm often not getting a 1 combat on floor 1 and 2. So expect to see a lot more resets, and just mentally prepare yourself for it. You might spend 30 minutes resetting runs on floor 1, and you might not even see a 1-1-2-2-2 for a while. So 1-1-2-2-2 is quite a bit more rare in IS3. And the other thing that I will mention is you do have the opportunity to get a less than 2 combat on floors 3, 4, and 5 in IS3, while that was not possible in IS2. In IS3, using a key, you can change paths that you have and skip an extra combat. So you can, in theory, get a full IS3 run that only has 1 combat per floor. And then you can even, on top of that, get end of times and skip a combat stage completely. So the RNG factor in IS3 I find is a lot higher than in IS2 for those reasons. In IS2, you still have the RNG because we had 2 items in IS2 that allowed you to skip a combat, and you had the RNG for the encounters for the second one. So one thing that I do want to introduce you to, our little handy friend, this little spreadsheet that's available on speedrun.com that Spifey worked his ass off, made the spreadsheet for IS2. I'm working on the spreadsheet for IS3. I know it's quite bright. Hopefully it's not killing your eyes. This is important to at least have a basic understanding of. Every single map has a different time to clear. And now, there's 2 things that you have to separate. Time for last enemy to spawn, which is actually what's tracked in this spreadsheet, and time to clear. The last enemy spawning doesn't necessarily mean that's the time that you're going to clear. And that's important to note for certain maps like Ebb, like Ubibona. So And here in Cistern, we have a variable time, but either way, Cistern is always the best on floor 1, while Insect Infestation would be the worst on floor 1. And you can see that this is quite a significant time loss if you get Insect Infestation versus Cistern. So this is where there's going to be even more resetting. It's going to suck. This is what you signed up for. Hopefully I haven't pushed you away from speedrunning just yet. But there are time losses for certain maps that you get. So let's say you get Insect Infestation on floor 1. This is a 30 some odd second time loss. And hopefully I can zoom in a little bit. There we go. Oh, that should be easier to see. So let's say you get Insect Infestation. It's a 67 second time loss on 1 times, or about 33.5 seconds on 2 times. Let's say you get, on floor 2, you get Crime and Punishment instead of Ebb. That's over a minute lost. Stuff like The Spread on floor 5. That's a significant time loss versus Piper's Call. These are the things that, even if you're getting a really good run, you're playing extremely well, just the fact that you get Crime and Punishment, that's the only one combat path that you have, that can ruin your run. So it's things to note that you might have to reset runs regardless, even if you're playing really well, even if you're getting good paths, just because of the spawns of which maps are coming up. The other thing to note is that Curse of Cognition, which is Highmore or Ending 1, is 30 seconds slower on 2 times than a perfect night clear. So there's that to remember too. If you do get the night encounter on floor 2, on floor 2, I believe is the last he can spawn, and you're feeling good about the run, you already got a damage relic or something else, you might want to switch to the night ending. Otherwise, if you're not feeling too good about the run, your vouchers have been bad, you haven't gotten any relics that do anything anyway, you might want to stick with Highmore on -1 difficulty, which is what the Lungmen Dragons requires, or the minimum, which is basically just easy mode. You can kill the knight within this spawn time, this required spawn time, with just Chalter. As long as you get the -80% defense relic, just Chalter is enough to DPS him on -1 difficulty. As soon as you're at +0 difficulty, you're going to start needing at least 1 decent damage relic, and every difficulty above you go, the harder it's going to be to kill Knight during this kill game, to allow this 197 or this 30-second time save, basically. Otherwise, on floor 3, unlike on IS2, IS3, significantly closer for all of them. All of them are relatively similar in terms of time. I wouldn't really worry about which one you get. Obviously, it depends on what team you're using, which one might be easier for you to clear fast, to clear right as the last enemy spawns, but otherwise, wouldn't worry about it too much. So I mentioned also, spawn time might not necessarily correlate to how easy it is for you to clear. Ebb, for example, the last enemy spawns in large groups. There's going to be a bunch of fish that spawn, but then they sit at the bottom of the... And that's where a lot of people will clear them. When they're sitting at the bottom of the map, they're just going to start picking them off one by one. And this can be much slower than 63 seconds. This might start getting closer to Omen or Malady timings. Now, there's still a significant difference. So even if you pick them off one by one at the bottom of the map, you're probably still better off versus Omen or Malady, and definitely still better off versus Voiceless Summons or Leviathan's Followers or even Crime and Punishment. Ubi Bona is in a more awkward spot because it's the second fastest map, so you do want to take this on floor 5 if you see it, unless it's counter to Piper's Call. So Piper's Call is obviously the first priority, and the second priority is Ubi Bona. Ubi Bona, the Reaper Flowers that spawn at the beginning of the map, but they're the last things to move. So if you're clearing all the other enemies and you're just waiting there at the end for the Reaper Flowers to move, you're at a time loss versus some of the other maps, especially like Faithful's Utopia, Out of Control, or Pool of Recreation. If you're going to take Ubi Bona and you have the opportunity to take something else, you have to be sure that whatever you're doing, you have to clear the Reaper Flowers faster or leak them. Just activate them, leak them, and get it out of the way, and just clear the rest of the enemies quickly. Otherwise, you might be running into a time loss with Ubi Bona. So there's these things to think about. And on that note, I've seen a lot of people running IS3 speedruns, and they're skipping a lot of vouchers. So let's go ahead and let's maybe do a run. I'm just going to do it on floor 1. I'm going to take my resourcefulness. So we're aiming for about 10-12 seconds for the opening sequence. That was probably closer to 12 because I was a bit slow. Now in this case, remember, I'm going to, before I even click, or as I'm clicking, I'm looking, and I see there's 2 encounters, so I'm proceeding. And then we start this. Now, I'm not putting the timer on. This is probably not the fastest way for this comp to clear Symbiosis, but just remember, you're going to be aiming to figure out consistent setups for every map, and part of the skill of running IS3 is going to be about running each map as fast as possible based on what operators you have at the time. So you might not always get the same operators for every single run, and that's part of running IS3. You might not get that sniper voucher to get shelter, and then what do? Who are you going to be building to improve your run and fix your run so that you can still clear within reasonable times? So how you pivot in runs, how you manage each of the maps, that's all super important to getting faster times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the timer as soon as I click recruit. So I've been seeing a lot of... So I'm going to just sit here for a second. I've been seeing a lot of people skipping vouchers. And that's good and bad. Why is it good? It is a time save. You don't have to actually pick an operator. Why is it bad? Well, if you're not clearing a map as efficiently as you could because you skipped the voucher, the time losses can be staggering to look at. So I was watching somebody earlier today, and they skipped a Vanguard voucher where I had recommended they take Texas. And they had skipped that Vanguard voucher and ran into one of the maps where Texas was maybe about a 10-second time save. So how much time are you saving by skipping this voucher? I got 2 vouchers here, not the... Oh, it's true. That would be why. So let's see. I'm going to start the timer as soon as I hit recruitment. So instead of skipping, I'm going to hit recruitment. And then I'm taking Texas, and I even made a mistake. And there we go. It was like 4 seconds, right? 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds. Now, I still have to put them on the team, so that doesn't take super long. But let's say that takes another 1.5 seconds. And then eventually, depending on the operator, you want to promote it, that's going to take another, let's say, another 3 seconds. Your total time investment for taking another operator with a recruitment voucher is, let's say, 6 to 8 seconds. In that region. 6 to 8 seconds fully. Now, now you have to remember, is that operator going to save you 8 seconds or more throughout the entire run? It really depends. And this is more about your confidence. You're trying to set up to be as confident as possible that you can spawn camp every single map in IS3 unless you're fishing for extremely specific maps. Which is something that I don't really recommend, because just look at how many maps we have on floor 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different maps right now that you can get, and the same on floor 4. So if you're skipping every single recruitment except for maybe 1 or 2 throughout the run, you still have to be confident, regardless of whatever team you're building, that every single one of these maps you're going to be able to spawn camp it efficiently. So these are things to think about if you're skipping or taking vouchers. Now, and it's happened to me. Oh, wait, I don't have any hope, but remember, you're just clicking quickly. It's going to happen that you're just clicking quickly. Oh man, that's a tongue twister. Clicking quickly, and you're just trying to get through everything that's coming up on your screen. Oh shoot, there's nothing here that I want. Or I'm trying to decide, oh wait, should I take this or should I take this? At that point, you've broken your rhythm. If you enter a voucher that you didn't necessarily want, or don't have the hope to take what you were planning on taking, just immediately abandon it. Done. It's going to happen. It's going to happen that you're going to take vouchers that you're not going to necessarily want. Or not have anything inside that you need. Maybe you misjudged how much hope you had. You forgot you spent the hope. Whatever. It happens. And then here we go. We get to our shop. I personally take ingots. It takes so little time to accept the ingots that I take the ingots. And one thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to try and want to memorize the key relics for each of the each that you have in mind. So that way, if you see any of them, I'd say maybe memorize the top 10 relics. I have a lot of experience playing IS-2, and a lot of the relic images and effects are shared with IS-2. So there are some that I know, like the Rosemontis' Embrace for minus 30% defense, the Ursus photo, there's a whole bunch of relics, the attack speed relics, things like that. I know what they look like. So for me, if I'm seeing them, I know to pick them, and if I'm not seeing the things I recognize as useful, like I know what these are and they just got introduced, but I know it's not useful. So if you have to sit there and start clicking through every single relic, you're going to be wasting so much time. And here's one deciding thing that I haven't decided if it's good or bad, if it is re-rolling shops, if it's worth it. I still haven't decided if it's good or bad. I'm going to leave it up to you. It takes a lot of time to roll that dice, and since it's completely optional, you might look at it as a time loss. But remember, if you roll a 5 or higher, this whole shop is going to get refreshed, and you have improved chances of getting that end. And from my experience, I think there's always been a tier 3 relic in the shop, which Hand of Purification counts as a tier 3 relic in this case. So imagine this spawned as End of Times after the refresh. Now, again, I can't tell you if it's good or bad to do this. You're going to spend maybe 3 to 4 seconds for the refresh and then to recheck what actually changed and if it's worth taking. I'm going to leave it up to you to decide. I've personally not been doing it, but I might start doing it. Just because at this point, my runs, I probably have to start fishing for End of Times. And then so similarly, when I get to floor 2, I'm doing the same thing. I'm not checking for the 4th node, what it is. I'm just immediately seeing, is there a 2 encounter path? Is there a 2 encounter path? Sometimes it's the combat will be up front, and then it's 2 encounters after, anything like that. But I'm immediately glancing, is there here a path with 2 encounters? And then here's, remember the decision making. Do you want to take night? Do you not want to take night? This is going to be very much dependent on how you feel and how confident you are that you're going to clear night in time. And when you get a situation like this and it's a split, obviously take a look. You're going to be able to see before you choose which one, if one of them has another encounter after, or if they both have encounters, then you have to quickly recognize, in this case, which map is faster. Obviously here, they're the same map. You take what you... If it's the same map, I would recommend the emergency, assuming that the rest of the path is obviously the same. Just because emergencies, they provide you an extra relic and increased combat XP. So you can level up your combat level faster. And he's going to start moving out in a second. And I know that the last enemies that spawn on this map are invisible enemies that spawn on the bottom right. So I'm putting Fang forward, just so that I can snipe the invisible enemies faster. These are the last ones. So I normally have Cruz facing left, but I decided to face her right for this one. Either way, doesn't matter too much. So you're trying to minimize how much time left you have after the last enemy spawns. So in a case like this, you can easily just eat to your Texas. And emergency dispatches are very, very nice. They take a little bit of time to select, but they can help remove some RNG from a run if you do end up with one, as you just... And here, so remember I was mentioning, try and recognize the relics that are useful to you. None of these are useful to me. I know this because I recognize the relics, and they're not one of the ones that are the useful ones for me. I know this one is, I don't know, either... So this one's the summons, this is life, and this is life. I know that none of these are useful to me. So at this point, don't go start clicking. Your ideal is to not click through and see which ones do what. Just, at this point, pick one. It's none of the ones that are useful to you, just pick one. So on first scan, I'm looking. Are any of them end of times? And none of them are end of times. On second scan, are any of them useful to me? Are any of them useful to me at this time? So one of the useful relics. Usually we're looking for damage relics, ones that are going to improve how much damage you're dealing to the bosses. And in this case, none of them are. Just pick whatever. And if ever you just see one of them that is useful to you, just pick it. Just immediately done, in your mind, done. It's not there's no end of times, just pick the first one that you... And if you don't recognize, just pick whichever one. That's my big recommendation. I see a lot of people pausing to see which relics might be better or worse for them. Don't do that. Especially since most people are running at -1 or +0. The minor differences, if you do recognize one of the relics, the minor differences that might happen, like if I'm taking the 3 attack speed relic and the 5 attack speed relic exists, it should not make or break my run. So just take the fastest one that you recognize. And now, when you see this symbol up here, this is the one where there's 2 extra nodes for a floor. That's most likely going to be GG. For run, that usually adds 1 extra forced combat. And then we're just going to take a look here. So at minimum, we're forced into... Minimum is 2 combats before we get to the middle part. And then again, as I mentioned, 1 extra forced combat at the end for the extra 2 nodes that we got. So I'll leave the run here. And this is it. You're going to be regularly abandoning runs without completing them, just so that you can refresh and try and fish for a better run. And that's just how it's going to be. So here I got extra hope. And I forgot, and then I ended up taking longer for the cruise. Here I can see that there's 2 encounters in a row on the top path. And then I'm immediately starting. Now, insect infestation is a 30 or so times second time loss. So this would already not be an ideal run. But anyway. I'll just play through the end of floor 1. I believe I've covered everything I want to talk about. So truly try and remember your decision making. Try and figure out the best ways that you want to tackle each of the maps, what kind of utilities that you're going to need to tackle each map and clear it as fast as possible. Personally, I don't think that skipping every single recruitment voucher is, because I see a lot of runs after that have a huge time loss on, let's say, out of control on floor 5, because they have only 4 operators to work with, and there's 3 different enemy spawns towards the end. So consider how fast you're clearing every single map, and if you're consistently spawn camping them. On easy mode, it's obviously easier, because something even like a basic Fang is going to be able to survive a lot of these maps, even against elite enemies. But on +0 and even higher, which is being run, you don't always get that. I think the only other thing that I didn't talk about, again, it's just pure RNG, is if you get one of those extra uninvited guests. And now these drifting caches, remember I talked about these dice rolls? This is a huge waste of time. If you have the extra keys that you don't think you're going to need, it could be worth it to open it, like this, because for all you know, it might be an end of times, right? You're fishing for end of times or one of the damage relics that you need for whichever ending. So like if I got a really good damage relic here, let's say like enemies have -30% defense, or your ranged operators deal +30% whatever, 30% physical damage, whatever it is. Now I'd be seriously looking and immediately taking a night ending. Obviously, it didn't happen here, but this could give you an example. Now, as I mentioned before, keys are used to jump paths in later parts of the map, and it could also be used to take one of the bottom paths, which is where you'll see more wish fulfilleds, more emergencies, and other nice nodes at the bottom. So if you don't have a key ready, you won't be able to take advantage of a -1 combat floor or a better bottom path where you're going to be able to collect more relics and have an easier run. So it's not always worth opening the caches. Honestly, most of the time it's probably just better to skip it. Just never mind split. So, and then I would never use a dice roll on it. The less dice rolls you can accomplish throughout the run, the easier you're going to have. So I remember I was talking about if I got a good relic there and I would be hunting out for night. In the end, I didn't even roll for the night, even though I had that. And then, oh, I immediately saw that I got Sniper Squad. That's a second combat. So I got 2 combats. And the reason why I don't go and check for floors 1 and 2, especially floor 1, it might be worth it on floor 2 to check. I'll leave it up to you. But especially on floor 1, if I leave immediately, so let's say you start a run, and then for whatever reason you have to leave, so you pick your operators. You pick your operators. And now I see this symbol, and I leave immediately. There's a cooldown timer anyway. So, for me, if I see a 2 encounter path, I may as well save the extra 3-4 seconds, whatever it is, to not check the rest of the path if I already see a path with 2 encounters. Because in the end, I have to sit here waiting for this anyway. And that's roughly... It's just a bit shorter than actually just playing the first map. Now, if you saw like I did that I got bewildered and 2 extra nodes, you could just immediately leave and then go do something else, some other account management. I can go claim something like this, I can go do my base rotations, check my recruitments, anything like that. Maybe burn some stamina, and then come back, oh, I'm ready again, and then you enter your run again. And then you just work like this. You're going to, I find on IS3, you're going to be doing a ton of resets on floor 1. So immediately, this is again a reset. I see 2 combats in a row. This is a reset. You're going to be resetting floor 1 and 2 a lot. So I don't know if you're able to see my live split on the top left of the screen, but that 1 out of 36, that's how many runs I completed on my stream the other day. How many runs of 1-1-2-2-2 I got out of the 36 attempts on my stream 2 nights ago. It's not a lot. Versus IS2, where I was saying maybe about 60% of my runs I could get a 1-1-2-2-2. I'm getting 1 out of 36, 1 out of 50. If you saw my YouTube video, I have gotten a single 1-1-2-2-2. And on that 1-1-2-2-2, I lost about 30 seconds to the dog spawning, the uninvited guest. So it was rough. It's rough, and that is 3. So some people will thrive in it. They're going to be willing to take it might be demotivating to fail to reset runs on floor 1 for half an hour, but remember that payoff, it feels good. So I hope this inspired you to play more IS3 and do more speedruns of IS3. I hope this gave you some tips and tricks to think about during your runs. Remember, you're aiming to solidify who you want to use for the final boss by the time you hit floor 3 or 4. If you still have to, if you're still trying to add units for your floor 5 boss kill on floor 5, that's a bit of a problem to me. It obviously depends on the RNG. Maybe you had no options, but try and pick operators that are going to be helping you for that floor 5 boss by the time you hit 3 or 4. And this goes for not just speedruns, just runs in general. Have a precise strategy, and that's what Arknights is, having a strategy. So, thank you for watching. Hope you had fun. I'm going to be available in my Discord and on twitch.tv/glitched tonight. I'll be there to do IS3 coaching, so if you want to share your screen with me, and I'll talk you through runs and watch how you play, give some tips, give some recommendations to help improve your runs, I'm available. And whether it's for the Lungmen Dragons thing or just in general, I'm always around to help answer questions on my Discord and on Twitch. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.